everyone, and welcome to another edition of 5 Facts. Today we're here to talk about Insidious. This is a James Wan directed, Leigh Whannell written horror movie from Blumhouse from 2011. It's an atmospheric movie that relies a lot more on building tension than it does on the gore that you would see from Wan's other projects like Saw. So I think that there's some really interesting things that have been done here, and it's why I decided to throw it on 5 Facts this week. Anyway, let's get to the facts. Fact number 1. The composer for this film actually plays the monster. Joseph Bishar is a composer that's been around for a little while. Whenever this movie first came out, he'd been in a fair amount of movies. Now he's up in like the 30s and 40s. He's done it for about 20 different horror movies right now. This film, he was offered a chance to play something a little bit different than being the guy behind the music. This time he got to play the lipstick demon. Bishar had never done an on-screen role before. To go from zero to a monster is pretty cool. He actually would go on to do a bunch of monsters after this point in movies that are related to this. He was the demonic figure in Annabelle, he was Bathsheba in The Conjuring, he's been in a bunch of different ones, including, I think, 3 of the 4, possibly 4 of the 4 Insidious movies. It must have been quite a transition going from probably not even being on the set and just getting like the video and being told to make a score for something, to actually being the main focus of the film. And he did a really good job. There are moments in this where he's genuinely terrifying. It's just a little bit harder towards the end, and I don't think that was his fault whenever they start showing the demon a bit too much. Fact number 2. This movie was made in response to critics saying James Wan was just a torture porn artist. Leigh Whannell and James Wan didn't want to be typecast into this thing like Saw, where all they were making was torture porn. So after they made one of the Saw iterations, they decided they were going to do this. Insidious is actually a horror movie that doesn't have cursing and almost no blood at all. It's something where they relied on the atmosphere. It's not torturous, it's not brutal. There's only a few brutal scenes in this movie, and they wanted to show that they could do that. They even took a long time and subverted most of the tropes you see in haunting series, such as, why don't they just move out of the house? Well, it doesn't work that way. They specifically looked for ways to invert the way the haunted house genre works, and I think it did a lot of good things for this movie. Wan and Whannell were able to craft a purely atmospheric and intense horror film without the blood and guts of Saw, and more props to them for giving it a shot, especially on a fairly small budget. Fact number 3. The chalkboard behind Patrick Wilson's character is loaded with Easter eggs. When Patrick Wilson is seen in his classroom, the board behind him has some Easter eggs on it. Some are more obvious, such as Billy, the puppet from the Saw series. The other ones are a little bit less. It says Detention at the top of the screen. We can see that James Wan's name is there, ×2. We see a couple other people that are part of the set, such as Leslie Borchard and Yasim Osman, who are actually the hairstylists for this movie. It would be a probably pretty fun detention service to go to. Kind of the horror equivalent of The Breakfast Club. Fact number 4, and we've got some spoilers for Insidious 2 ahead. Bail out if you can't take them and you haven't seen that movie. The next fact we have is that the bride is packing a bit more than usual under that wedding gown. James Wan wanted a character that was more masculine, a little bit more frightening than he thought the average woman would be in a wedding gown, so he decided to cast a man in this role. Little did he know that this would lead to Leigh Whannell taking that and turning it into one of the main plot points of the next movie. So not only was it that it was a man in that, it was actually supposed to be a man the whole time. The character of Parker Crane was actually castrated by his mother, and that led to some pretty messed up things in his life. So because she wanted a girl, she ended up doing this, and that's what turned Parker Crane into this evil spirit. So it's kind of interesting seeing where that went there. I love facts like this because it's sort of an unintended consequence where all of a sudden you have the entire character development of a movie based on a casting choice that happened in the previous one. It's cool whenever things like that get improvised, and I really like what Leigh Whannell did there. Fact number 5, popcorn facts. Whenever I can't get one big meaty fact, I'm just going to shoot a bunch at you. By using a limited amount of locations and many long days, this movie was churned out in 3 weeks for a mere $1.5 million. Considering it made almost $100 million in theaters, it was a smash hit. Much of the inspiration for this movie was taken from Tobe Hooper's Poltergeist film, and I think you can see a lot of that with the way the kids are haunted and everything. So it wasn't like it was a direct ripoff, but it definitely took some things from Poltergeist. The lipstick-faced demon was named that because they used lipstick to make the red marks. This wasn't because there was some backstory with lipstick. It was simply that was how they did the coloring that made it look kind of like Darth Maul. Jason Blum of Blumhouse wants to create a massive shared universe for horror films. Canonically, Sinister and Insidious actually share a world. And there's a lot of things saying that they could share a world with The Conjuring, but I think that's been a little bit muddled because of having Patrick Wilson be in that movie on top of this. So it's not exactly a shared universe, but I think they're starting to build towards something there. I mean, we already have 4 Insidious films. We've got another Sinister movie coming out. There's a lot to build on here, especially with the supernatural world that's starting to have some rules established. Insidious is not a perfect movie. It definitely has some flaws, but it packs enough charisma and talent to make you forget about them. Not only does it take a lot of the standard tropes and turn them on their head, not only does it make it so that you have some fairly likable characters getting through some very tough times, and they don't fall into a lot of petty squabbles. It's just interesting how they get there, and how they actually do a very good job of building levity with Tucker and Specs. Like, it's a good way to break the tension, and this movie did a good job of this. It actually had a few decent jump scares as well. My only problem is it didn't feel like they entirely stuck the landing, like it was just a little bit of a rush job. I love the further, but there was something about the way the lipstick demon moved that didn't quite sit well with me. It wasn't creepy, it was more weird. I also didn't like that this movie ended on a cliffhanger, but whenever you combine it with Insidious 2, I think that those two movies combined make a very fun and interesting story. It's more of a pairing than it is adding like Insidious Chapter 3. So there's some really cool stuff that happened there. It's interesting that because of some choices that happened in the first one, they had to start making prequels because of who would be the main character in the 3rd and 4th movie. And I think that they probably regret some of those choices as far as the continuity, but it's still a lot of fun, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's not going to be better than some of the major horror classics out there, but it's better than The Nun. It's worth your time, and I would like to know what you guys think. Were you actually scared of this movie? Did you think it was ridiculous? Did that one particular jump scare with Patrick Wilson really get you? Please put it in the comments. Let me know what you guys thought, and I hope you have an excellent day.